Testing, 1, 2, 3. Ready, mate. Here we go. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Eureka Conservative Podcast for another fun-filled episode of Bob Opinions, Kobe and JJ Annoyances. Kobe was my last dog. And a bit of politics, bit of issues, bit of opinion, all the good stuff. All right, what else could you be doing better on a Thursday night except for watching the footy, Wimbledon, FA Cup? Anyway, for those who are joining in, welcome. Nothing is spectacular tonight. I am going over some policy in my head about politicians' wages and what they should be tied for, which I'll explain for in a minute. But I'm going to start tonight with sharing with you. I'll just get it up. I'm never very good with these share things. I think that's the right page. Let's have a look. There it is. I want to share with you this guy's opinion. Just listen to what he's got to say.
Online like we are.
Now, before I start, I should say he's a Yank in America with an observation on American politics. And this is just after the Supreme Court knocked back Trump's executive order on birth right citizenship, which was a big issue over in the States this week. But just listen to what he's got to say.
Where has logic gone in this world? It really sucks today that we are getting so many losses on such crucial decisions in the Supreme Court, the SAVE Act in the Senate, and many other things. And what's difficult about being somebody like me and a lot of people on X is that we are what I would say hyper involved, hyper political. You're probably way more in the know than most of your family members if they're not equally online like we are, or watching, the news and discussing this stuff on the daily, right? But it really sucks whenever the Supreme Court just gets something so wrong. Like Clarence Thomas's dissent on the decision for birthright citizenship is so spot on. Like the 14th Amendment was clearly written for slaves and their children. Why would you ever have a country where you can just hop across the border, have a kid, and then suddenly, well, you get to stay. You just punched your ticket. And I get kind of burned out on this whole topic of, well, America is a country of immigrants built by immigrants. Yeah, it's true that during the colonial times, people were coming here from Europe and settling here, and they are immigrants. But once you establish a rule of law and conquer, it's like people give me shit that are on the other side of this topic. They give me shit because it's like, so you conquered a nation or you conquered a continent from the Indians, and now you're being conquered and you're mad about it. Well, okay, yeah, that's what happened. But also at the same time, we did conquer this and we won, and I'm mad at my side right now. If this is a conquering that is happening, that my side seems to be powerless. We're told it's got to be handled in elections. We've got to handle these problems in our elections. And they're not wrong. But I don't see us handling this in elections. Not enough people show. So it's almost like we're getting what we deserve. Then, right now we have all the power, though. And even our own team, who is in the Senate, they're not passing the SAVE Act. So I don't have as much faith in our elections as I would have if the SAVE Act was enacted, right? Excuse me. And so it's just like we have the tools to fight it right now, but the people who are supposed to be fighting it for us, who we elected and sent to Washington with a mandate, are not fighting for us. So do elections actually solve any of this? Do elections fix this? And I see a rising sentiment that we don't vote ourselves out of this anymore. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse until we die or we fight it back. We fight back. And I'm a Christian, and looking at what the Bible has to teach us about this stuff, right? It's going to get worse until he comes back and calls us all to his kingdom. As Christians, we're supposed to vote. We're supposed to care about, our laws and our country and stuff. But in the end, you're not going to stop what is prophesized. But it just sucks, It just sucks. I don't know. It's really hard to have a positive outlook on life. I get really worked up over what I see happening in Europe. I have 4 small kids, and I get really worked up. I get worried about their future. I get worried about if I did them a disservice by having them. I don't regret having them, but I worry that if we continue down this path, what does their future look like? Because from what I'm seeing, if you're in the United Kingdom right now or in Australia, your daughters are probably going to be gang raped by a bunch of Muslims one day. And I don't know. I just don't know. Is that blown out of proportion? Is that dramatic? Is the algorithm swaying my opinion? I don't think Muslims are our friends in their entirety. I don't know. It's hard to have a positive outlook on life today with all of the losses we keep experiencing. It's hard to have the energy to keep fighting it. I guess for me, it's give my kids the best life that I can give them, teach them morals and values, teach them how to defend themselves, teach them to know God. That's probably the most important. But where do we go from here? I don't know. If you've made it this long, let me know.
So very interesting. I found that one really interesting. Now they're talking about different issues over there, but the part there that resonates a bit with me, and I get into this point sometimes, and I'm sure plenty of you out there have also got into these positions sometimes, where no matter how we vote, we always seem to come back to the same position. And every time we get, since Howard got dumped, every time we seem to get there was only been the one time federally, we got a leader that potentially could have got us out of that, I think, and that was Abbott. And they got rid of him pretty quick smart, and they replaced him with the globalist in Turnbull. And then we got another pretend conservative in Morrison who sold us out to the globalists again with the net zero bullshit. And then we had Peter Dutton, who was a conservative, who also sold out. He went anti-Trump and went with while he promoted nuclear energy, he didn't promote it during the campaign. And he was all against Trump, and he sold out basically to the net zero nuts. So we haven't had a real, what I would say, until now with Pauline Hanson, out and out conservative that we could vote for. And that's been going on now. The last conservative leader we had was Abbott. He didn't last long. The last one before that was Howard. But I've listened to a few people that are critical of John Howard. I get that. But under his prime ministership, we weren't as divided as what we are now. There was still hope there. We had a strong economy. I know he made decisions that had ripple effects moving forward, but it was a different country under both Hawke and Howard. They were different times. Ever since then, it doesn't seem to matter how we vote. We get the same globalist nonsense. And I'm a bit concerned we may go down that path yet again. I know One Nation's rising in the polls, and I hope and pray every day that keeps going, because it gives us a different option to vote for. You don't have to agree with everything Pauline Hanson says. You don't have to agree with everything on the One Nation policy platform, though I'd say if you really care about that flag in this country, there's an awful lot on there you can embrace. But I just fear the centre right's going to shoot itself in the foot again. And whether One Nation want to admit to this or the Liberal Party want to admit to that, to have any hope of defeating Labor, they need to come together. And and if they do come together, it would be a big thing, because if they do come together, what's actually probably going to evolve out of that is actually a One Nation government. It will be in coalition with the Liberals and the Nationals. The Liberals and Nationals will need to play a minor partner role in any sort of alliance. But at least it would be a centre-right government. But, you got the moderates in there still looking to torpedo the ship. We had Andrew Hastie saying, well, he's declaring war on Hanson and One Nation. I mean, what a stupid thing to say. I mean, the political party that is tearing this country apart is the ALP. It's not One Nation. One Nation have 2 members of the parliament. Every question time like today, he's got, near 100 MPs on the other side giving them crap. I mean, they're just absolutely tearing them apart in question time. The Liberals are getting annihilated. And that's a lot because they got moderates like Tim Wilson and Andrew Hastie and others that just have no cut through. Angus Taylor is trying hard, but he's also got no real cut through. He doesn't have the personality you probably need to be that. Kennett, when he was Premier of Victoria, had cut through. He was really resonating with voters and younger voters. Abbott had cut through. His 3-word slogans, I mean, they're trying to replicate that, but, sadly there's only one Tony Abbott. I just don't see Angus Taylor being able to replicate what Tony Abbott did. Even with Tony Abbott as president of the Liberal Party, you've got to be your own person. But if the Liberals don't get some sort of their act together, they're just going to be non-existent at the next election. And then it's just One Nation versus the Teal Party, the Green Party, and the ALP. So the Liberals and Nationals do need to pull their finger out so we have some sort of chance under this ridiculous preferential system. Because if they don't, we're going to get the ALP again. And the ALP, because I think One Nation will do well, But the ALP could win. And if they are in a position, the ALP, that they need the Greens in the Senate, then we've got an ALP government that's reliant on the Greens. You couldn't get a worse situation. Or maybe an ALP government, if the Teals get their act together and field enough candidates to get a balance of power in the Senate, they could be relying on the Teals, which is nearly just as bad as relying on the Greens. So, I mean, it doesn't seem to matter what we think as Australians, as conservative Australians, I should say, whether we can change the way, the direction this country is going. So I really share some of the frustration that young fella in America shared. He's feeling frustrated as well. So I'm sympathetic to that. I'm becoming more sympathetic. I've never really said it till this point about people with the opinion that we can't vote our way out of it. I'm not there yet. I think we can. I think we're bizarrely in Australia, we've probably got a little bit more hope than everywhere else because of One Nation. But if Australians do not grasp this, and I'm worried that we won't. So we've had a lot of people that were on social media that were banging on about One Nation for quite some time while they're rising the polls. So they've had a couple of polls where they showed their vote drop. Well, that's going to happen in politics. I mean, if you follow politics for long enough, polls goes up, go down, whatever. Ask anybody in the Liberal Party. Ask anybody in the ALP right now. We're in different times. They're going to be volatile right up to the election, I think. But just because One Nation had a few polls, not bad polls, they just went down a couple of points. That's going to bounce a lot. But today, they're leading in the polls in both Victoria and federally. So, but people, when they went drop down, everyone's starting to panic and, they shouldn't have said monoculture at a press club appearance. This is Pauline. And they started banging on about all this sort of nonsense. And I just thought we'd gotten away a little bit from that, from, all the poll-driven policy, all the poll-driven reaction, all the focus group thing. I thought One Nation was a vehicle to get away from that. That was the domain of the major parties, but it doesn't seem it is. A lot of people are coming, it's the wrong messaging, it's the wrong this. Well, because we dropped a couple of points. A couple of points in a poll is within the margin of error, by the way. So, but now I challenge one of the guys on there. I won't say his name. I don't want to expose him on the air, but he's a younger fella and he's obviously got into politics and he's looking at the polls and he started going on about they've got to change this, they've got to change that. No, it's the wrong thing to do. This is what the Liberals have been doing for 10 years with their Labor Light stuff. They look at their polls, they look at their focus groups, they jettison their values, and they try to be Labor Light so they can win these inner city seats. All they do is look at the polls. Decide your values, decide what you stand for, draw a line in the sand, make the argument, win the election. Do you have to be aware of the polls? Yes, you do. But if you're going to be banging your head against a brick wall and then you're going to change everything that is an ethical standard, a point of integrity for you to stand up for what you believe in, what you think this country should be, if you're going to sacrifice them simply because the polls don't reflect those values, what does that say about you as a person? That you're going to do a 180 just to be popular? I don't want that sort of person leading my country. I don't want that person helping me lead my business. I wouldn't want that person leading a family. Know your values. Know what's important to you. Know the standards you don't want to walk by. And then draw a line in the sand and say it. Now, there's probably not many people watching this podcast because there's the AFL, there's Wimbledon, and there's the soccer. Fair enough. Hopefully a few watch it on replay. But today I copped a bit of I wouldn't say a bashing, but I copped a few critical points, people responses, simply because I called out Karl Stefanovic, or in my opinion, what Karl Stefanovic stands for. A lot of people are going down this road with Karl. We're always looking for this knight of shining armor to get us out of this hole we've dug ourselves in. I've got news for everyone. There is no knight. There is no knight on a shining armor on a big white horse coming to save us. It's us as voters that have got to save us. And if we don't see that, then sadly, I'm with this guy that I just played. Maybe there is no way of voting ourselves out of it. I look online all the time and I just consistently see everyone's talking about mass immigration. Fair enough. But what's the real problem there? The real problem isn't the mass immigration. Yes, that is a problem. But it's the people that facilitate mass immigration. the people that argue for it, the people that get into government that, without even putting it to the Australian people, help it to happen. And you see it all the time. If you watch Question Time, you see these arseholes. And guess what? They're white, Anglo-Saxon of descent, people who have had a long heritage in Australia that, for whatever reason, do not like the country and don't like where it's going. And they're starting to talk about modern Australia. They're trying to split. They're trying to cut the umbilical cord from what my parents built, what your parents built, what our grandparents built, and they're trying to divorce it from us. Now, we should be fighting tooth and nail for that not to happen. But I see too many comments these days of people who just don't understand history. Today, Pat Conroy at the National Press Club said Sir Robert Menzies, probably the greatest Prime Minister Australia's had, was a Nazi appeaser. Now, this is the same guy that declared war on Germany in World War II. He got knocked out as Prime Minister by John Curtin, another decent man, one of the last few decent ALP leaders we had. But Menzies was no appeaser or sympathiser with the Nazis, but now the ALP is trying to paint him as that. And people are going to get sucked into that bullshit. It's like Tucker Carlson. He comes out and lies about everything, and people just accept it verbatim. They don't challenge it. They don't challenge Candace Owens. They don't challenge Megyn Kelly. They just accept everything they say. There was a post today, and again, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a Zionist. I'm a Zionist to the point that I think the Israelis, the Jewish people, are entitled to their heritage through the homeland, which is Israel. I've got no problem with that. Now, there's different definitions of Zionism. So, but people will say, oh, you're a Zionist, whatever. But, you know, I don't really care. No, I shouldn't say I don't really care about Israel, but I care far more about Australia. I feel far more care about our issues, but I'm also not so closed-minded to realise that overseas issues don't impact on us. And if you don't believe that, go around and look at all the phones in people's hands. Were those phones made in Australia? Was the software developed in Australia? Were the apps that are on them, some of them would have been developed by Australians, or were they developed by Asian-minded people, Chinese, Koreans, Vietnamese, very smart people, or people in Tech Valley, you know, in California? So we all want to go around and say Australia first, but the fact is Australia can't survive on Australia first. We need these other countries to enjoy and to continue to enjoy our way of life. I drive a Toyota Prado. It's a fantastic car, best car I've owned. And I've owned Fords, I've owned Holdens, I've owned that. The Toyota Prado is a fantastic machine. You know, I've had that 20 years without a problem. A Japanese-made inspired machine. Not forgetting that Toyota used to have a lot of their manufacturing based in Australia. So we can coexist in this world. We're part of the world, the global community. So I'm not everything's Australia first. But I recognise I'm a nationalist, and everything we should be doing should be placing Australia first and foremost in our mindsets. If you're just going to be think you can close yourself off to the rest of the world and say Australia first, you just don't understand the geopolitics. You just can't do that. It will come and bite you in the ass. It is biting us in the ass. I mean, right now, because of the mass immigration, we've got people from across the globe coming into our country, many of them who hate Australia, who would love to tear it down and replace it with something else. So whether we like it or not, globalism's not on our doorstep. It's knocked on the door, opened the handle, we've invited them in, and we've welcomed. It's in our neighbourhoods. So, I mean, sorry, we have a huge fight to get back to, to get back to Australia to what we all perceived it to be. Not perceived it, who lived it. Like, I lived through Australia at its greatest moments. It was a magnificent country. It is still a great country. It's not magnificent anymore. I mean, that 15-year-old kid who got stabbed to death yesterday, that wouldn't have happened in the 90s and early 2000s, and even, you know, right up to, I'd say, 2010, you know. But in the 80s and 90s, even in the 70s, which was a tougher period, Australia was just magnificent. And we weren't racist back then. A lot of people were trying to paint us out racist. In the 70s, we welcomed the Vietnamese community into our country because we felt guilt for what happened in the Vietnamese War. We welcomed the Italians and the Greeks to Australia because we felt guilt with what happened in World War II. We opened our hearts, we opened our lives, we opened our society to people that we felt could assimilate into our country. So the later generations, and these are the white ones who hate this country, they want us painted as racist, as bigots and all this. Don't forget, after World War II, it was overwhelmingly the white Anglo-Saxon people of this nation, the people that were the inheritors from the forebears that fought World War I and established this country. They were the ones that recognized the Indigenous, gave them citizenship, recognized Australians for Australian citizenship as opposed to British citizenship, gave the Indigenous the vote. A whole bunch of things was based on that generation that the current generation want to paint as racist, bigots, non-thinking, all that. Some of the biggest, they got rid of the White Australia policy. That was that generation that did it. So yet they want to divorce us from those generations. There's a lot to be learned from them, and our history has been rewritten. And the more you listen to this, the more you see it, the more you see people in our parliaments like Pat Conroy that want to rewrite our history. They want to rewrite our education system so it teaches a different history. They want to change what it means to be a family. We've gone from a nation that was built on the foundation of a family, a mum, a dad, and kids. Yeah, the white picket fence, which is a ridiculous, can't remember the word, but a ridiculous example of what it was. But yeah, it used to be you used to want to get your education, get a job, get married, have kids, buy your home. That was your white picket fence. That's what the leftists try and paint it as. That was a healthy ambition for Australians to have, and it served this country well for hundreds of years. That was the better life. Well, now the dream is, well, do we want to have kids because climate change? Or do we want to bring a white kid into this planet because they're such oppressors? We can't have a house. Let's have an apartment. Do we want cars? No, we don't want cars. We can survive on public transport or a bicycle. Everything's been dumbed down. And, you just go, where does this madness end? And you look into our politics and you look into the people that are in our parliament and you go, and I did this today. I was listening to Question Time. And you've got Albo, they're up and about because, in Albo's opinion, he's given us all a massive tax cut, and that's helping us with cost of living. And the tax cut works out at $5 a week. Wouldn't even buy you a cup of coffee in a week. How much has our cost of living gone up since Albo became Prime Minister? How much has the value of our wages gone up since becoming Prime Minister? If you are a small business operator like me, how much harder has it become to run your small business? For example, just with increased energy costs, which we were promised we're going to go down. So life hasn't got easier, but Albo thinks magically that a $5 a week tax cut is going to solve all our problems. That's not even a car registration. That's barely a quarter of a car registration per year. $250 doesn't pay half the weekly rent in my house. It would struggle to pay the food bill, and I'm single. Imagine family of 4 or 5. So they're just trampling on people's ambitions and people's dreams of how to become better. And even if you become successful in Australia, the government's going to come in and take 50% of your wage, 50% of your savings, 50% of your wealth, and then they tax us and fine us on everything. So why do you want to become successful? To become successful, you're going to get more money taken away. And we're in a point now, for example, in Victoria, where businesses in Victoria are going to up and leave or do their business online so they can deal with global markets. Well, so much for Australia first. Why are you going to cop having to pay? If you're a business, why set up your business in Australia where you're going to have to cop these increased wages when I can actually set it up globally on the internet if I want to, and I can employ people from the Philippines, from India, from Asia, from wherever, at half the rate of what I could employ an Australian, with none of the industrial wards or stuff that you have to tolerate, and you can do that quite legally. If I want to, I can establish that business overseas and keep a lot of my own wealth. I love Australia. I love Victoria. I love Melbourne. I'm going to stay here and I'm going to actually fight for my country and establish my business here. And whether I like it or not, I'm going to obey Australian laws. But not everyone's going to do that. And the more good people we push out, the bigger a shithole this place is going to become. We've got to be really, really careful. And my big fear is Albo gets back in. And I've said this a few times now. I think we've got this next election to get Albo out and his ALP minions, and we've got to get him out of both the lower house and the Senate. So whoever comes in, whether that's a One Nation-led coalition or whether that's an LNP-led coalition, whoever gets in, they can actually govern and repair this country. It's going to need repairing. It's going to take a hell of a lot of repairing, and we as voters have to keep them accountable, not just at election, but in between elections. It's something I've got a project in mind that I'm going to really push from next week. So get tuned in next Tuesday, 8 o'clock. I've already broached it a few times on past episodes, but I'm going to get into it in a much bigger way. So I just really feel, just like that guy did in America, can we vote our way out of it? For the first time probably in my life, I'm not too sure. And when you get to that point and you go, oh, that's actually a pretty frightening thing. You know, I'm a person who's an Australian through and through. From what I got to talk to my older sister, she does all the family tree stuff. But for all I can see, we nearly go right back to the First Fleet on my mum's side. Dad's side's a bit harder to do, apparently, for whatever reason. But he definitely goes back. Dad fought in World War II, was born in Australia. His parents lived in Australia. Whether they were born in Australia, I'm not sure, but I've got a funny idea they go way back. But Dad, for other reasons, we have trouble getting our tree built on his side. On Mum's side, there's plenty of thing. I've got to catch up with my sister and find out. So I'm really bred and, you know, I'm stock. Australian stock, well and truly. But, you know, people like me who live through the really good times, who would love to see that come back to this country, we're increasingly seeing that optimism, that dream of getting us back to what it was. We know where it was. It's tangible. We can nearly reach out and touch it. But it's getting harder to see it now. It's like you're on an ocean and the tide is taking you further and further away from that island that you used to, you know, you had such a good time at, but you jumped in this boat and you've just slowly gotten further away with the tide and you can't find your way back. That's what it feels like. I think that's what it felt like with that guy in America. And when will that tide become so bad that you actually can't find your way back? I'm starting to worry we're getting there. For the first time in my life, it dawned on me. I'll go back. I was looking at the question time in Parliament today, and the ALP were just ripping into the Liberals. And there was a bit of chatter then about who, you know, Hastie being the next leader. Well, God help us if Hastie's the next leader of the Liberal Party. But then I thought, well, if they do take down Angus Taylor, and I think Angus Taylor's still their best option. I'm not saying he's a great option. I don't think that. But who's next? If Angus Taylor goes, who are they going to put next? Tim Wilson? Disaster. Who the hell's next in the lower house? The one person I would say that I'd say is a bit of a firebrand that could be good in the job is in the Senate. And no, it's not Jacinta Price, it's Michaelia Cash. On the Nationals, maybe Bridget McKenzie, but yeah, not too sure about her. But I don't, Matt Canavan, he hasn't lost me, but he hasn't won me over either. I thought he would win me over, but he hasn't yet. He's too One Nation orientated, but, you know, I mean, I'm not going to have a national to vote in my electorate anyway, so it doesn't really impact me. He's more with the country voters. But who within the LNP ranks is capable of grabbing the party by the scruff of the neck, like Robert Menzies did, and even like Howard did, love him or hate him, he did this with his Big Ten. He kept it all under control. So he had very strong personalities who were successful politically, but also could get everyone working in the same direction, and they both led competent governments. You know, whatever issues you had with them, we had a good economy, we weren't in debt, we weren't divided, life was pretty good. The only time you thought about politics was at election time. Now, politics is all over you every day of the week. So, and maybe that's just a function of the internet and the social media and all this sort of thing. Not sure. But who is it? Who is it that sits in our parliament that could change things, change the direction of the LNP and help change the direction of this country? And it just then dawned on me, there isn't anybody. I'd challenge anyone to find one person within the LNP ranks, so not just the Liberal parties, the national parties as well, who is the one person in their ranks that could change the course they're on, because they're on a self-destruction course. If it keeps going the way it is, you know, you've got Melissa McIntosh, what an idiot she is, talking about the rebrand. Talk about handballing the ALP, the perfect bat to hit you around the head with. That's all she did this week. Then you got Hasty declaring he's taken on One Nation and it's war. And he's got Elbow patting him on the back in Parliament. And, you know, his mentor is Malcolm Turnbull. Talking about Back to the Future, oh my God. So I just don't know who in their ranks is capable of leading them out of this quagmire that they find themselves in. I pity Tony Abbott. He's now president. If I was offering Tony Abbott any advice, go outside your party. I'll be going to find a very successful person that you can appeal to their love of country to come from the outside and lead the Liberal Party. And I would also not just recruit one person to lead them, I would recruit another 10 to form his cabinet and get them all coming in at the next election. That's what I'd be doing, because the people aren't there in his party. They're just not there. Yeah, and the other thing he's got to do is find a way to purge the moderates. I would be, if it was two countries, I would be giving every moderate in the Liberal Party a visa to go join this New Deals party. You know, and they might then actually have a chance, because they could actually stand for something instead of getting torn down all the time. You know, and that's what's going to tear down Angus Taylor. There's been this constant fight between the moderates and the Conservatives, and they tear each other down all the time. And it's just a self-destructive cycle that they're going through. But I don't think they've got anybody in their numbers who could change this for them. So they're in real trouble. So, you know, what's the saying that's been going around? One nation or no nation? I actually think that's pretty valid. But we've got 2 years out, and I hope and pray Pauline and her party can pull this off. But despite the polls, it's going to take a lot of work and, dare I say, a bit of a miracle for them to become the government. There's so many forces aligned against them. You know, even though they're doing well in the polls, they're only 30%. So that means 70% of Australians still don't want to put their vote with One Nation. That's a lot of people. All right. As much as it's great they're on 30%, 70% don't want to put their vote with One Nation. Mind you, the good news for them is 70% of the country don't want to put their vote with any one particular party. But you've got the media against you. You've got the political industry against you. You've got the bureaucracy against you. Everyone is against you. You know, so there's so many people wishing them ill. And so it will be interesting to see how they go over the next 2 years. And if I'm being brutally honest, One Nation's also at different times got themselves against them, as does any political party, because they've got to get everybody in their team pulling the correct way, you know, in the right direction. And like we had with the new member for Farrow, he's inexperienced. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Founded him at odds with the party. And Pauline had to bring him into line. So you've got to be 2 years. They've got to run a perfect race. And if they don't get up, where are we going as a country? It's confronting to think about it. But look, all you can do is one day at a time. You can support them as much as you can, get back. And listen, if the Liberals can change tack and get back to what they once were, I mean, it gives us options on the centre right. But they've got to stop worrying about One Nation, get their own shit sorted out, and take on the ALP again. They both have a common enemy. It's the ALP and the Greens and the Teals. So anyway, that's enough of a rant for me. Covered a bit. Let's get on to some social media. Speaking of which, I've had a fun day today. Let's go on my notifications, I think, because I've had a few today. Here we go. We had Jacinta, Nampa Jimpa Price. She's another one. She's just joined in an attacks against One Nation, suggesting Pauline Hanson operates a family dynasty without democratic process. There might be a little bit to that. I don't really care. There's dynasties in every single party. The anointed ones, whether that's from the trade union movement in the ALP or, the faceless men in the Liberal Party, they anoint certain people. I mean, I can only assume when she's talking about family dynasty, she's talking about a daughter. Well, good luck. Who cares? There's plenty of other people within, whether they're in the ALP or the Liberals or whatever, that are sons and daughters of former politicians. I don't get why that's a disqualifying factor, but it's just disappointing that yet again the Liberals are out bashing One Nation. And as the comment there from Warford, well done, Warford, Pauline Hanson went to prison for her and our beliefs. Totally. Anyone who does that, that's why I'm a big fan, for example, of Tommy Robinson. You don't have to agree with everything he did, but this is what I was talking about at the start of the show. He had the ethics and the integrity to stand for his values, and he went to prison for them. Doesn't come back much more. You don't have much more integrity than to do that. This is the part I'm talking about here too. I put a post up today. All politicians and bureaucrats should have their wages decided by the average median income of everyday Australians. You can look up Grok on this or whatever AI you want to use, but that currently sits at just over 74,000 per annum. So the median income is basically the average between the highest wage and all those in lowest. And if you put them all together and divided them, all that sort of stuff, that's what it comes out at, 74 grand. Every politician with bonuses is on far more than that. I go a bit further. They shouldn't get any bonuses, nothing more. They need to pay for their own travel, offices, things such as office expenses, travel, all that sort of thing, like the rest of us do. I don't get any bonuses. For me to lease out this house, which has got my office on it so I can work from home, I've got to pay rent. When I've got to get in the car to go to my different venues for my work, I've got to pay for the petrol, the registration. I've got to pay for the upkeep of the car. So why do these bastards get their bonuses for their postages and all their social media and their advisors? It's all a nonsense. So like I say here, watch how quickly they would change their stances on a number of fronts then. So, for example, just on energy, you watch how quickly they would embrace coal energy if their wages were linked to productivity and the way our country is going. So for them to raise their wages, for example, they would have to, I'll just change my thing here, they would have to be linked in to some productivity KPI. Now, that's not unusual in business. In KPIs all over, in businesses all over the country, people are provided bonuses and incentives to do a good job. For example, shareholders. If I run a company, as I have got, I have some shareholders, and when we make a profit, those shareholders will benefit. And those shareholders may then decide to give me, as a director of the company, a bonus. Elon Musk just achieved that recently. So, the incentive on the profit you make and the more profitable you make your people should be tied into the benefits you get. The problem is our politicians make us less wealthy as a country, less productive, they less profitable, and our cost of living just keeps declining. Their cost of living should decline just like ours does. Instead, we've got this ridiculous system where they just keep getting automatic pay rises. Screw that. We got to bring that back, where their wage gets linked into how well they do, how productive they make us, how much our wages go up, how much profits business are making, and also on the flip side, how much debt we're going into, how many businesses go bankrupt, how many people are on the dole, out of work, on welfare. So they should then get the opposite. You know, their wage should reflect, it should go down for the worse our economy is. I think there's got to be linked to how well the country's going, traveling. And the better it travels, the more income they make. And the worse it travels, the more income they lose. And that should also be attached to their superannuation. So next week, I will be launching that. I'm going to give that a bit more thought as a policy. So buggers paying them and giving them a lifetime pension, I think it should be linked to the job they do, bad or good. Let's go back into the one-page thing so you can follow this with me. Where am I to? Notifications. In Victoria, made this post today. So here's the poll. One Nation leading Victoria, 27%. ALP 26, LNP 26. So I think there's a number of questions. And this is where our politics, as I say in this, is a dumpster fire at the moment. So will the ALP dump Jacinta Allen for Ben Carroll? I think that would be smart to do so. I don't see it'll help him much, but Ben Carroll's got more of a chance to sneak him across the line than Jacinta Allen will. Will the LNP stuff this up? Well, with the current more redeeming stuff going on, there's probably a very big chance they will. And when will One Nation announce their candidates and party leader, and I should have put policies in particular for this state before the election? They're polling well, but they've got to come into this election in Victoria with the leader, with candidates, and with policy. Those poll numbers will drop if they don't have them. So hopefully they've got that sorted. Otherwise, they'll miss a golden opportunity. But as a thing with the preferences, as long as we get that right in the centre right, it's looking like we'd probably get an LNP government. So, but I don't trust the LNP on two fronts. One, that they won't stuff it up, and even if they get in government, can they govern? I have my doubts. Already went over that. Put this post up. I screwed up about maternity leave, but it's got a lot of response, nearly 1,000 responses. And this is what I was saying before. So from the 1st of July, the new financial year, as a small business owner, I will need to pay increased wages and have to contribute more for maternity leave. I actually should have said superannuation there. I was in the middle of about 10 phone calls, got confused, crazy time of year. But in a way, we all still have to everyone's coming back, oh, well, the government funds it. No, the government doesn't fund increased maternity leave. The taxpayer funds it. So in a way, I still do have to fund the increased maternity leave because I'm a taxpayer, as we all do. And our taxes will be creeping up. Through bracket creep, our taxes have been going up. So anyway, my business costs are increasing. And while people may celebrate this, and in good financial times, as I just was talking about, I would celebrate that as well. But in tough economic times, where small business owners like myself are simply struggling to make ends meet, this will result in one of three things. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. Business owners can raise prices for their customers, which they will do. They can reduce staff, which I don't thankfully have to do, meaning somebody loses their job and wages. How's that a good thing? Or you can go out of business because it's just untenable, and then even more people lose their jobs and wages and wealth, and we become a significantly poorer society with more people on the streets, more homeless people, more people struggling on the buy, and here's my boy trying to have a say. So, like I said here, with the politicians, increased wages and income needs to be tied to increase productivity and good economic outcomes, both for businesses and the country. Instead, we have politicians and bureaucrats making these decisions with next to no experience in conducting a business or a company or anything of the like. They don't know what it is to keep the country wealthy and profitable where everyone can benefit. If businesses are struggling, the country is struggling. I don't know why people, and a lot of people don't seem to understand this. Businesses employ people. People pay taxes, as do the businesses. If more businesses go out of business, less people are working, less people are paying taxes, and government then has to decrease spending or go further into debt. The more debt we go into, the more inflation goes up, the more cost of living goes up. It's not hard to figure out. It becomes, again, a self-destructive cycle. Our international rating will drop, which means our lending, our interest on lending will go up. Again, more government debt. We're in that position right now. Yet what are our government doing? More spending, more bureaucracy, more people being employed by the government than private enterprise. We should be shrinking government so it has less expenditure. We should be making us more profitable, more efficient. And then by doing that, we increase profits. Businesses can employ more people. They can actually pay better wages. They can contribute more to superannuation and things like maternity leave through taxpayers' dollars, whatever. But more importantly, those businesses will have increased profits, giving incentive for more people to start more businesses so they employ more people and more people are paying taxes. And the government is paying less welfare. The government is itself then making more money. But you listen to the young communists who have been indoctrinated by the universities, and I'll tell you what is frightening in America is the communists taking over the Democrat Party because there are communists through Qatar infiltrating our universities with big cash splashes. Everyone talks about Israel. What about the communists that are infesting our universities and indoctrinating the minds of our youth towards socialism and communism? And that's in real time in America. Everyone talks about Australia being in the canary in the coal mine. No, we're not. The canary in the coal mine is what's going on New York in America, what's going on in the Democratic Party in America. And if you don't know, you should get on. And what's going on in the UK. You have an alliance between communists and the Islamists, the radical ones, who wanted both tear down Western society. And you've now got flat-out communists getting elected into the Democratic primary. So they will go to elections for Congress seats. If they win that, you're actually getting flat-out communists into the American government, their parliament, their Congress, where they can impact legislation. Ben from Australian Talk, on one of the last podcasts, he said he went over to America. And I had my doubts about it at the time, and I think he's saying it for different reasons. But his sense is he has a sense of an inevitability that America's heading towards civil war. Now, I'll tell you now, if they get communists in their Congress and they get enough of them, which they could, to impact their way of life, I think the Yanks, just because every citizen over there is armed, they'll go, voting's not winning this for us. We've got to do something else. And sadly, maybe Ben's right. Maybe they are on the verge of civil war. There's certainly a lot of that talk in England. And how much can you cop as a population when your way of life is being degraded the way it is from what we see over there? Hope everything we're seeing is totally wrong. And I don't think we're in Australia anywhere near that at the moment, but that train comes very quickly when it comes. So I think we've got to be careful. So, geez, I'm getting into it tonight. Sorry, everyone. Got to have a bit of fun. Get my screen back. What else am I getting on into? I had a lot of notifications. There we go. In the Victorian election, again, these are the polls. Marco's one of these guys. He's just into the polls, but this one was actually a good poll. I'll give him that. It just looks like when you read these polls, even though One Nation is leading the polls, like I said, they don't have candidates, they don't have a leader, they don't have policy. I think that'll work against them. I think they actually needed them out already. The fact that they don't have them out already, I think will work against them. But who knows? They might have one big, massive launch coming up. They might be trying to time this perfectly. But if they don't, we've basically got three major parties, the One Nation, ALP, and the Liberals in Victoria. They're evenly split, roughly 30% each. And it's looking like the LNP will do the Stephen Bradbury. And even though they're not deserving of government, I don't think they're anywhere near deserving of government, but they're worst of the three evils. It looks like they'll just fall in because everyone would vote for the drover's dog at this stage to get rid of this Allen government. So I think the LNP will get up. I think they'd have to do an awful job, something absolutely tragic to lose this. And I actually think Jess Wilson, to her credit, and I don't agree with everything she says. Some things I do, some things I don't. I'm not voting for her, by the way. I'll be voting One Nation. But I will give the Liberal LNP my second preference. So I'm using that as insurance because I want the ALP out. But I think that's the where a lot of people will land once November comes in. So I think the LNP will get up. It'll be interesting to see how much they get up by. If this poll holds true, I think they'll have a pretty good win. So but do they deserve it? I'd say no. I really would. So anyway, we've got Julia Gillard. Here's the hypocrisy of Elbow. Where's Elbow? I've got two to go. So we've got Julia Gillard. So under Julia Gillard, all right, let's listen to what she's got to say first.
If you look at the parliamentary debates in the changes to the Sex Discrimination Act in 2012, you'll find that the issues you're referring to were not raised by anyone. Because they simply weren't a matter of public discourse the way they are today. So it was a different time. It wasn't something squarely before the Parliament at the time that the legislation was being amended. So I think we make an error in uplifting what we know now and public discourse now and just putting it down 14 years ago.
So what she's talking about there, under her leadership, the first female Prime Minister, they put through an amendment to the Sex Discrimination Act that enabled a lot of this recognising these trans women as women, which has led to women in female sports, women in females' change rooms, toilets, female-only places. It's caused us a nightmare for this country. And because our judges are a pack of idiots, they're supporting that legislation. But to their defence, that's all they can do. The legislators are the politicians. They pass the laws. The judges have to uphold those laws. So she's in a public forum and she's answering a question about this. And what she's now a former ALP Prime Minister who's admitting in a roundabout way that those amendments they put in weren't well thought out. They didn't take into consideration the future repercussions of them, and they weren't designed for what they've led to. Now, the interesting thing about that, this is a doyen of ALP politics. They hold it right up there. Yet the current ALP politicians and leadership, including Elbow, will not do anything to address it. Both the Liberals and One Nation are putting forward or have put forward amendments of their own to strike this out of the Sex Discrimination Act so we can get back to common sense about female sports and female private places. But they've voted them down. So not only are they voting against the LNP and One Nation, they're also now defying the position of one of the doyens of the ALP. So they're actually voting against what Julia Gillard is saying here. So either Elbow's lying or Julia's lying or they're both lying and the ALP are just all full of shit. So I think the third one's probably the most likely. So bunch of idiots. And they wonder why we've lost faith in them. Faith in them, faith in the Liberals, a whole lot. Whoops. Get that one screen. Like I said, there's been a bit going on. I've been on the old X today. For me, the busy times are during school terms because with sport and all that sort of stuff, that's what I deal with. So school holidays is always a time where I've got a bit extra time on my plate. So I've got onto X a fair bit today in between. Been doing a lot of invoicing and reconciling in my bank books for the end of financial year. So been into that. That's why I'm a bit disheveled with my looks, unshaven, all those sort of things. So, but anyway, that's the hypocrisy of the ALP. I copped a fair bit of flack on this. Karl Stefanovic. Now, this is purely my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. I find it funny on this thing. I hate Piers Morgan with the passion. He's an Islamist apologist. You've only got to watch his shows. He tries to say he's not anti-Semite, and I don't like the word anti-Semite. I think a lot of the Jewish community go to that too quickly, though I think they've got legitimate rights since October 7th, 2023 to be concerned about it. But even before that, and I had Jewish friends who said this very thing. Too many of their Jewish people use the anti-Semitic slur like a lot of people use the Nazi slur, all that sort of thing. And I think there's a bit of truth in that. But Piers Morgan is a clear anti-Semite, just like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are. I mean, you've only got to watch his panels where it's always 3 versus 1. It's always a bully group that picks on the Zionist or the Jewish person on there and they pile in. Piers Morgan's also totally against Tommy Robinson, who I think, and I could be wrong, I love Tommy Robinson because he's called out the Islamic gangs, he's called out the rapist, he stood up for Britain, and he's gone to jail for his beliefs, something that Piers Morgan would never do. And there's a lot of other people that he platforms that are like Cenk Uygur from Young Turks, total prick. Anna Kasparian, he platforms her. He platforms Candace Owens. He platforms Dave Smith. Just people that are absolute arseholes. So I can't stand him. Just do not like him whatsoever. But if you want to like him, that's great. If you want to like any of those other people that I've just mentioned, that's great. That's for you. I've had my doubts about Karl Stefanovic. I don't trust Karl Stefanovic for a number of reasons. Number one, with all the Israel Folau thing, he blasted Israel Folau, called him an Islam. What did he call him? Oh my God, a homophobe. How bad is that? Getting confused with an Islamophobe. But he called him a homophobe simply because he stood up for his faith. And I mean, if any interpretation of the Bible, especially in the New Testament, especially with Paul's testimony when he's writing his letters, there's no doubt that they do not support homosexuality in any form, shape. They just don't do it. So Israel Folau was standing up for his own faith, his own Bible, his own God, and following his faith. It's a pity more people wouldn't do it. You know, don't be say you're a Catholic and then not lead a Catholic life, for example. Albo does that. Joe Biden did that. A bunch of people do that. I hate it. So Karl went in on the cancel part for Israel Folau. So that's number one. Number two, he was one of the ones who pushed the vaccine. He wasn't an anti-vaxxer. He pushed it. So he's part of Channel 9. You remember the Channel 9 ads? Two, a guy that I've had my issues with who's blocked me since, Craig Kelly. But Craig Kelly I got a lot of my respect during the COVID years. After the COVID years, it dropped off a bit. But during COVID years, Craig Kelly, to his credit, was a warrior. And he went on their morning show with that silly blonde woman. Can't remember her name. And she lectured Craig Kelly and told him to shut up because he was an anti-vaxxer, all this sort of thing, you know. The term they used to sledge everyone who was opposed to the COVID-19 vaccine, which so many of us were. So, but Karl was joined in on that pylon. He then joined in on the pylon for Novak Djokovic to be detained and sent out of the country because he had the audacity not to get a vaccine. So there's lots of reasons I don't trust Karl Stefanovic. So when he's coming out of Channel 9 and he's going to become independent and have his own podcast, I'm going, I've seen this movie before. Anyone heard of Tucker Carlson? You know, so there's a few other things Karl Stefanovic's done since that I don't trust. So I had my doubts about him. I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. until he sat down with Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan is a vile prick. Absolutely vile prick. He'll throw his country under the bus. He'll throw his country's history under the bus, their culture under the bus. He'll throw his friends under the bus. He'll throw his parents and grandparents under the bus if it means more clicks. And he will set people up. He did it this week, and he'll try and embarrass, bully, and intimidate them. He's a prick of a man. He's a gutless coward. So when Karl Stefanovic goes on and gets him, I think Karl got, because they've got the Karl Stefanovic mods, when he's got Piers Morgan on his platform, I'm going, well, if that's the sort of person you are going to associate with, I want nothing to do with you. So I made that comment. You'll read it in there. So I'll just read it out. And I thought it was a pretty straightforward comment. It wasn't too hard. So in my opinion, anybody who will sit down with the vile prick that is Piers Morgan for a buddy conversation loses me. Sorry, Karl, I've had my suspicions about you and now you've confirmed it, as I've just explained. No decent person would befriend this bastard who is selling out his own country to radical Islamists. You will be Australia's version of Tucker Carlson and you cannot be trusted. So that's my opinion. Now, that's just my opinion. But today, I copped it a bit, and from some good people too, which was, I'll be honest, it was surprising. No offense to those people if you're listening, but it was surprising. Because if you've followed me long enough, I don't care about the clicks. And I don't really care, if I make $1 out of this podcast, great. If I don't, not the real reason I did it. I do, and thank you to all those who support me, by the way. Not many, hopefully gets a lot more. But thank you to those who do, because it does take up my time, and I do spend some money on this. So for those who do support it, I'm very grateful for it and very appreciative of it. So I ask people to buy a cup of coffee. Some people do, not many. Most people go along and they listen to the program. That's fine. That's their decision. I'm a nobody in Melbourne who gives an opinion. I don't want to be a Tucker Carlson. I'm not going to sell out my values. I'm not going to walk by the standards that I think are important, because when you walk by the standards, they're the standards you live by. So there's certain things I won't walk past. And people when they do this, I won't walk past it. I'm not going to walk past a person like Tommy Robinson, who's given up twice his life to go to jail for things he believes in. He fought for those young girls in Britain who've been raped by Islamic grooming gangs. He stood up and fought for them when no one else would, and he's been defamed, deriled, abused, and sent to jail for that fight. And people like Piers Morgan threw him under the bus. Now, I don't care, a lot of people also threw him under the bus because he speaks out in favour of Israel. Well, that's his right. You don't have to agree with it. Pauline Hanson speaks out in support of the Jewish community and Israel. That's her right. You don't have to support it. I speak out in favour of Israel and the Jewish community. That's my right. I also don't have to agree with everything Benjamin Netanyahu does or the Israeli government. I will speak out against that when I want to. But here's one thing I do bloody well know. The one thing that occupies the minds of the radical Islamists more than anything else is Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu and the IDF. And if that is ever gone, they will stop focusing on them, and all their focus, some of their focus is on us, but all their focus will turn to the West. It's already on us enough. We don't need it on us anymore. Israel is that, as a lot of the Yanks call it, that aircraft carrier in the Middle East. And this is what I was saying to people. You can't blind yourself to the geopolitics too much. Be Australia first, but don't be blinded by it. Because if Israel ever goes, Western countries like Australia will become targets. And if you look at the map of the world, one of the countries that is closest to the Middle East and potentially target is bloody Australia, and one of the hardest to defend because we've got this massive ocean border. People can, as they've done under Kevin Rudd, people can get on boats and get here. Who knows who will let in the country? Now, thankfully, that's gotten better, but the illegal immigration is still bringing in people we can't trust. I mean, everyone talks about illegal immigration. What about the illegal immigration that bring people sympathetic to Hezbollah, Hamas? We see them marching in our streets with the Palestinian flags. What about the two guys at Bondi? Were they legal or illegal here? You know, so legal immigrants can do just as much damage as illegal immigrants. So, and that's where I think Scotty Challen and a few others are talking about the remigration. Scott, if you're listening, I'd still love you on that program to discuss that further, but that's up to you, mate. So I did cop a bit of flag, but I just find it amusing. And again, I don't want to cause anyone offense, but it is amusing. I mean, little old me has an opinion, and all of a sudden, oh, well, you don't believe in freedom of speech, or you're trying to cancel or whatever. I've had a few messages like that, DMs and all that sort of thing. I said, oh, no, I didn't try and cancel anybody. I just dismissed, I did dismiss Karl Stefanovic, but that's my right. If you want to follow him, go follow him. If you want to listen to anything him or Piers Morgan, that buffoon, wants to say, do it. My opinion, they're not worth listening to. I'll still listen. I'll give my opinion on it. But I just now, in my own mind, I've got a really good, my gut was screaming at me not to trust Karl Stefanovic. That's just been confirmed from the people he associates with. You can tell a lot by the way the people who they, you can tell a lot about a person by who they associate with and who they continue to tolerate. So look at any influencer, look at any politician. For example, Andrew Hastie, his mentor is Malcolm Turnbull. Well, as soon as I found that out, I dismissed Andrew Hastie. I was a big fan of Hastie at one point, but now you'd never get me voting for him. Anybody who wants to associate himself with Malcolm Turnbull, okay. If that's the sort of person you want to associate with, good. Good luck getting the votes you need. If Karl Stefanovic wants to associate himself with Piers Morgan, yeah, I don't really care for his opinion much. I'll listen to it. I'll debate it. I'll express my opinion on it, but I don't care for it much. I know where his ideology stands. He will do anything for a click. I mean, if, for example, he interviewed Tommy Robinson, he had, an all buddy sort of interview, and I thought, no, do I give this guy the benefit of the doubt? Like I said, I'm a big supporter of Tommy Robinson. And I thought, well, maybe, yeah, maybe not. But then his very next guest is Piers Morgan, a guy who despises Tommy Robinson. So that tells me straight away he'll go to the person that give him the most clicks. So, you can just imagine it's only a matter of time before he becomes anti-Israel or pro-Islam or something that'll give him clicks, because then he can derive an income out of it. So, yeah, kind of silly. Let's go for one. Oh, yeah, actually, there is one thing I want to bring up. If I can get to it. Excuse me for yawning. Interesting that Hansen has said more redeeming is not welcome in One Nation. A lot of people, I think, have gone off more. I sort of understand that, if I'm being honest. I hate to say it, because I love what Maura Deeming stood for and how she hasn't taken a backward step. I think it's all a bit hard for us to understand. It looks like Matthew Guy, who I can't stand anyway, he just put a hand on the shoulder, but you don't know what force in that CCT vision he was putting onto Maura. And when you consider Maura's history with abuse, you can understand why that impacted her. Did she make that? I don't know the ins and outs of that. Who made that public? I don't think it was Maura. I could be wrong. But whatever, they were champing at the bit. They were just looking at her to give them a reason to disendorse her, which I'm no doubt that's what they're going to do. So now that One Nation is also distanced her from her, it's going to be very tough for her to stay in politics unless she goes. She might go independent, but then, I think it'll be pretty tough. She may get by because she's a known name out there. Let's try to find it. Bear with me. I do like this. A more apt suggestion, this is about tying politicians' wages to our profitability, would be to enter for their pay to be tied to an algorithm based on the average figures from the ATO on the net operating profit of small businesses employing less than 30 staff. I actually like that. Well done, Salvatore. I like it. That's a very good suggestion. Sorry, guys. I think there's one just huge example of how pathetic our governments have become. Oh, I have trouble finding it. Here we go. So make sure you got that. So they're having a cull of the Brumbies at the moment. And this magnificent horse, magnificent. Heads up, I'm an animal lover, as you probably can tell with my things. I'll expand this. Got 3 pages on here. I'll get into the post. If I'm not, I'm in it. So this magnificent horse, it is so magnificent that the locals gave it a name. So the name of the horse that they gave it, oh God, I'll get it up. Sad to hear one of the most admired snowy mountain Brumbies, Mataji, was killed today. What a beautiful looking horse. The New South Wales government stated they are required to protect fragile alpine ecosystems, unless, of course, it's their favourite pet project, renewable energy. So this horse can be slaughtered, but all these trees doesn't matter that the renewable industry is not tearing down trees at a rapid rate for their windmills and batteries and all that sort of thing, but slaughter a magnificent animal like this. Just absolutely disgraceful. What a beauty. Why can't they relocate these horses? I just think it's disgraceful. You take a defenseless animal like that. They'll be in helicopters, shooting them from helicopters, horrible deaths. They might not even be dead straight away. They die. Some of them will die a long death. I just think it's disgraceful. And I think most clear thinking people would agree with that. So, here's the thing. Not sure I understand the grief about the Brumbies, provided they are euthanized as humanely as possible. No different. Well, they are different to deer, foxes, rabbits, canes, and toads. I put them in. Why can't you relocate them? That is a beautiful beast, and it doesn't deserve a bullet in the head to be going. So if you don't understand that, Neo, you're don't know. One of God creatures. Introduce pest. Here they go. So all the lefties get on there. This issue is the great gap between the city and the country. Decisions made so far removed from the people impact. It's tyranny. Totally agree with that. The ones from the country who have no concern for this, they are feral animals. These same bastards that say they are feral animals will be the first ones supporting the windmills they're building that are tearing down forests, that are killing animals, that are impacting on koalas and other sort of animals in the ecosystem. But, Brumbies, let's just shoot them in the head. I agree with this. Brumbies are part of our national heritage. Why don't they start with wild pigs, which are far more destructive? That's a country person. Where's Captain Dan from? Let's have a look. Good post, Captain Dan. Doesn't say. That's a pity. I'll be putting money with a post like that. He's saying, they are destroying the entire mountain. No, they're not. So the Greens are out and about on this post. So, like this, Robert Gibson. Good job, Robert. Good first name. Bastards. So politicians can give permission to bulldoze thousands of acres without any consequences, but wild horses are a bigger threat. Give me a break. Politicians are the enemy of this nation, not bloody horses. Great post. Great post. I'm going to quote that. Don't understand people who can justify the slaughter of them. So anyway, that's a bit of an example of the divide in this country, that some people can support that and some people can't. And I can't. And that historical context that guy's talking about, this goes back like well over a century to World War One. We took the Brumbies with us with our light horse in World War One to the Middle East, to Gallipoli, all that sort of place, and they helped liberate what was then Israel, the Sinai, Syria. They helped defeat the Ottoman Empire, and yet our government considered them equipment, and they either sold them to the Turks or the Arabs, which means a horrible life for them. And all our light horsemen became very attached to these horses. Read up about it. And either that or they slaughtered them. So they didn't bring them home. I mean, they back then they could have easily brought those Brumbies home and given them to the light horsemen that loved them to death, or put them out to pasture, gave them to farmers, whatever. It was a different country back then. Horses were needed on what we're doing back straight after World War One. So anyway, I think, we all there was a clip this week. I won't show it because I think it's disgusting, where they brought out a whole bunch of these radical Islamists going crazy about the West. From what I can understand, it could be wrong, but they brought out this poor horse dressed as something, and it all started, these Islamists started slapping this horse. I've seen them do this before. They dress it up as an animal. Usually it's a donkey, but this one was a horse. They dress it up as a representation of Israel, and then they beat the poor thing to death. There was a really good post today about that animal doesn't deserve that treatment, but I could live with all those humans getting that treatment. Sometimes I feel that way about a lot of our beautiful animals on this planet. Now, I'm by no means a vegan. Every animal on this planet has a distinct purpose. So cattle and chicken and all that, I eat my meat, all that sort of thing. Without them, we wouldn't survive. And it does need to be done humanely. But to cull a species simply because you're uncomfortable with it, I don't think it's the correct way to go. If you watch the series Shark on Channel 9, it would probably change your opinion about culling sharks. Humans are smart enough to find a way that we can coexist with the creatures that God's put on this planet. And we've got to remember the territory we go into. Sure, were they introduced, but every species on this planet of animal was introduced to different lands all throughout history. The dinosaurs, for example, were made extinct by meteors hitting the planet, supposedly. People and animals migrate from continent to continent, from country to country. It's been going on all through the Earth's history. So, okay, it was an introduced species. Who cares? Did that justify killing a beautiful animal like that horse? This dog is an introduced species. Dogs weren't part of Australia. Do we slaughter our dogs? Do we slaughter our cats? Where do we stop it? And don't forget, these culls aren't just restricted to Brumbies. We have culls of koalas. We have culls of kangaroos. We have all these culls of indigenous animals. So don't support them either. Find a different way. We've got to be able to find a different way. That's just my opinion. Anyway, I could be wrong. Happy to have someone on the show if I'm wrong. But been going 90 minutes of talking now all by my lonesome. So we'll call that a quit for this week. I'm trying to get our Big J group together. There's been a lot happening in the Middle East, so keep an eye out for that. So for those who don't know the Big J, that's the boomer, that's the immigrant, that's the groiper, and that's the Jew. So there's four of us. I'm the boomer. We've got Amri's the immigrant from Assyria, a Syrian Christian. We've got the groiper. Well, is Ben, who says he's not a groiper, but my gut feel is if he's not a groiper, is the closest thing to it. And he's a good kid, so I like having him on. And I can, like I say, I'll talk with anyone. And then we've got Daniel, he speaks out for the Jewish community. Good guy. So last time we did this, it was a great conversation. So we're trying to get the group together. I've gone off Trump a little bit. I'll explain those reasons when we get the thing up. And I have my reasons again. So if you want to have a crack at me for that, fair enough. But I still think that Trump is the best thing for the USA and the West. And if I was in America, I'd still turn out in the midterms and I'd support him because there's nothing better. If I felt there was something better, I would support that person. But in Australia, we've got Hanson. And if there was something better, would I consider it? Maybe. I do like Hanson, though. Again, like Tommy Robinson, she went to jail for what she believed in. For me, that's a very big tick. Very big tick. And she hasn't changed her views, really. She's changed them. She's changed them slightly. But she's been consistent all the way through on what she wants for Australia. And to me, that's another huge tick. And her press gallery speech was spot on in my book. But anyway, that's enough from me. So from me, good night. From JJ sleeping over there on the couch, looking, who could cull that boy? He's so beautiful. So from me, from my co-panelist JJ, God bless you. God bless your kids. God bless your grandkids. God bless your pets. God bless that flag. God bless this country. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.